All right, lesson 15, China and the other contemporary authoritarian states. Let's see if we can find anything of relevance here for our multiple choice. Peloton stock's up. There has to be a crash yesterday. Again, if we had maybe more than 32 questions, if we had 60, I would probably have a set on Cultural Revolution. But we only have 32 questions. And because we only have 32 questions, I don't really have a lot of time to put a focus on a lesson that we spent half a day on. So there won't be anything on Cultural Revolution on this midterm this week. And I'd say on your diploma exam, which is kind of not really your main focus right now, but on the diploma exam, it happens sometimes that there's a reference to China, and it should happen more than it does. Because China is very significant today. But more likely it doesn't happen. So if you're reviewing in June before your diploma, you might want to just watch that 4-minute video to remind yourself of the Cultural Revolution. But for the sake of our midterm, it's not that important. This is more of an economic indication as to the rebirth of China once it embraces Deng Xiaoping's idea to get rich is glorious. That China historically has been a world power, but in the age of liberalism, when it was practicing non-liberalism, it fell relative to the Western world and to America, but it has re-emerged as a rival to America as a response of embracing economic liberalism, but not political liberalism. So that's an interesting thing. Economically, if you're looking at using Mao in your potential essay on economics on the diploma, I would watch those 2 videos, but this test this week is not about economics. I think this one's even more clear as to the explosion of the Chinese economy as a result of Deng Xiaoping saying to get rich is glorious. We can see it was already growing, but the growth rate, the slope, the rise over run increases. In China, we know that they began with a few special economic zones, and as those special economic zones proved to be economic engines of prosperity, they added more and more special economic zones. But beginning in the 1980s, China really became one country, 2 systems, where the further you go inland, the more communal the lifestyle will be, the more communist socially they are, but also more communal they are economically. There's some major cities like Xi'an here that would be quite capitalist when you look at it, but the special economic zones, the majority of them are along the coast, and most of them are in the southern part. There's lots of great content here in terms of contrasting life under a dictatorship and life under a liberal state. And it's not just China, it's Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, it's North Korea today. And being aware of the limitations on one's life in North Korea, or the success of Gaddafi, can dictators ever be good for the citizens, versus what is being sacrificed by living under the benevolent dictator Muammar Gaddafi. It's worth revisiting if these are concepts still foreign to you, but won't be the focus on the exam this Friday. The idea that in countries like in Iran today, that human rights are not absolute, that people are publicly executed, sometimes stoned to death by the community. This is actually one of the questions I ended up taking off of the exam. I had a set on that, but I took it off because we didn't focus on it as much this term. What is martial law? The term martial law. Martial law, I don't know why it's spelled like Marshall there. It should be like Marshall like here. Martial law is the idea of not just rule of law, but now it's law and order. And the contrast between rule of law and order is on the exam. Rule of law, everyone is equal beneath the law. Everyone is subject to the law. Rule of law is constitutionality, right? Everyone, including Justin Trudeau, must obey the law. Law and order, when you have law and order, you often have people above the law. And the police are instruments of control on their behalf. You had law and order in Nazi Germany. You had the Gestapo and the SA and the SS enforcing Hitler's vision upon the German people. Hitler was above the law. If he was caught speeding, do you think the police would have pulled him over and gave him a ticket? Do all of this kind of stuff and then say, my Fuhrer, here you go, you need to slow down, buddy? No, he was above the law. He could do whatever he wanted. So we do have this contrast between rule of law and law and order. Rule of law, Constitution reigns supreme. It's like the divine right of kings, where it was God chose the government. In rule of law, it's the Constitution that gives the authority and the legitimacy to the regime, to the state, to the body politique. It's the one that establishes a relationship between government and governed, right? Everything must fit under the Constitution. Rule of law. Law and order. That's what you see in an authoritarian or a non-liberal state, when the police act as instruments of control. You will see that concept on the exam. There is going to be some connections to COVID-19, but we also do have the Cold War Contemporary World mini unit at the end, and COVID fits in there as well. So some of this COVID-related material might pop up better then. So might still get some COVID then. Even though I've said COVID won't be on this diploma exam because when did they field test those questions? When did they make those questions? We haven't really had an item development during COVID because of COVID. But we should still be ready for COVID on our in-house Contemporary World exam. This is a source we've seen lots of, and although you won't see this source again, because you've already been tested on it, or potentially tested on it if you chose it on an A1, you'll get this idea of freedom versus control as a theme on the exam. This specifically won't be on the exam, but it may be on the Contemporary World one. So that's that lesson. Whole bunch of rant at the end about that last visual, and that's lesson 15. I'm going to get you to go ahead and look at lesson 16. I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll try to figure out what was important in that lesson. Keeping in mind, while you're doing this, get your term projects done. Add keywords to your list of keywords. Add people to your list of cast of characters. Add arguments in favor and against democracy and stuff. You might as well do that at the same time so you're nearly done the course.